Who Moved My Cheese by Dr. Spencer Johnson. The story. Once, long ago, in a land far away, there lived 4 little characters who ran through a maze looking for cheese to nourish them and make them happy. They were mice named Sniff and Scurry and were 2 little people. Beings who were small as mice, but who looked and acted a lot like people today. The names were Hem and Haw. Due to their small size, it would be easy not to notice what the 4 of them were doing. But if you looked closely enough, you could discover the most amazing things. Every day, the mice and the little people spent time in the maze looking for their own special cheese. The mice, Sniff and Scurry, possessing only simple rodent brains but good instincts, searched for the hard nibbling cheese they liked, as mice often do. For the 2 people, Hem and Haw, they used their brains, filled with many beliefs, to search for a very different kind of cheese, with a capital C, which they believed would make them feel happy and successful. As different as the mice and the little people were, they shared something in common. Every morning, they put on their jogging suits and running shoes and left their little homes and raced out into the maze looking for their favorite cheese. The maze was a labyrinth of corridors and chambers, some containing delicious cheese, but there were also dark corners and blind alleys leading nowhere. It was easy for anyone to get lost. However, the 2 little people, Hem and Haw, used a different method that relied on their ability to think and learn from their past experiences, although they would sometimes get confused by their beliefs and emotions. Eventually, in their own way, they all discovered what they were looking for. They each found their own kind of cheese one day at the end of one of the corridors in Cheese Station C. Every morning after that, the mice and the little people dressed in their running gear and headed over to Cheese Station C. It wasn't long before they each established their own routine. Sniff and Scurry continued to wake early every day and race through the maze, always following the same routine. When they arrived at their destination, the mice took off their running shoes, tied them together, hung them around their necks so they could get to them quickly whenever they needed them again. They enjoyed the cheese. In the beginning, Hem and Haw also raced toward Cheese Station C every morning to enjoy the tasty new morsels that awaited them. But after a while, a different routine set in for the little people. Hem and Haw awoke each day a little later, dressed a little slower, and walked to Cheese Station C. After all, they knew where the cheese was and how to get there. They had no idea where the cheese came from or who put it there. They just assumed it would be there. As soon as Hem and Haw arrived at Cheese Station C each morning, they settled in and made themselves at home. They hung up their jogging shoes and out on their slippers. They were becoming very comfortable now that they had found the cheese. "This is great," Hem said. "This is enough cheese. There's enough cheese here to last us forever." The little people felt happy and successful. They thought they were secure. It wasn't long before Hem and Haw regarded the cheese they found at Cheese Station C as their cheese. It was such a large store of cheese that they had eventually moved their homes to be closer to it. and built a social life around it. To make themselves feel more at home, Hem and Haw decorated the walls with the sayings and even pictures of cheese around them, which made them smile. One read, "Having cheese makes you happy." Sometimes Hem and Haw would take their friends by in to see their pile of cheese at Cheese Station C, where and to point it with pride, saying, "Pretty nice cheese, huh?" Sometimes they shared it with their friends, and sometimes they didn't. "We deserve this cheese," Hem said. "We certainly had to work long and hard enough to find it." He picked up a nice fresh piece and ate it. Afterwards, Hem fell asleep, as he often did. Every night, the little people would waddle home full of cheese, and every morning they would confidently return for more. This went on for quite some time. After a while, Hem and Haw's confidence grew into arrogance, and soon they became so comfortable they didn't even notice what was happening. As time went on, Sniff and Scurry continued their routine. They arrived early each morning and sniffed and scratched and scurried around Cheese Station C, inspecting the area to see if there had been any changes from the day before. Then they would sit down to nibble on the cheese. One morning, they arrived at Cheese Station C and discovered there was no cheese. They weren't surprised, since Sniff and Scurry had noticed the supplies of cheese had been getting smaller and smaller every day. They were prepared for the inevitable and knew instinctively what to do. They looked at each other, removed the running shoes they had tied together and hung conveniently around their necks, put them on their feet, and laced them up. The mice did not overanalyze things, and they were not burdened with many complex beliefs. To the mice, the problem and the answer were both simple. The situation at Cheese Station C had changed, so Sniff and Scurry decided to change. They both looked out into the maze, then Sniff lifted his nose, sniffed, and nodded to Scurry, who took off, running through the maze, while Sniff followed as fast as he could. They were quickly off in search of new cheese. Later that same day, Hem and Haw arrived at Cheese Station C. They had not been paying attention to the small changes that had been taking place each day, so they took it for granted when their cheese would be there. They were unprepared for what they found. "What? No cheese?" Hem yelled. He continued yelling, "No cheese, no cheese," as though if he shouted loud enough, someone would put it back. "Who moved my cheese?" he hollered. Finally, he put his hands on his hips. His face turned red, and he screamed at the top of his voice, "It's not fair!" Haw just shook his head in disbelief. He too had counted on finding the cheese at Cheese Station C. He stood there for a long time, frozen with shock. He was just not ready for this. Hem was yelling something, but Haw didn't want to hear it. He didn't want to deal with what was facing him, so he just turned everything out. The little people's behavior was not only attractive or productive, it was understandable. Finding cheese wasn't easy, and it meant a great deal more to the little people than just having enough of it to eat every day. Finding cheese was the little people's way of getting what they thought they needed to be happy. They had their own ideas of what cheese meant to them, depending on their taste. For some, finding cheese was having material things. For it was enjoying good health or developing a spiritual sense of well-being. For Ha, cheese just meant feeling safe, having a loving family someday, and living in a cozy cottage on Cheddar Lane. To Hem, cheese was becoming a big cheese in charge of others and owning a big house atop of Camber Hill.